Hello. Um, Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for the 17th of August 2023. My name is Stephen Alchin and I'm the chair of the panel. The panel is currently streaming to you from the council offices in McMahon Street, Hurstville. The panel members who will make up the panel today are on my immediate right, Ian Armstrong, an expert panel member. On my immediate left, Annette Rahotis, an expert panel member. And on the far left, Jenny Simpson, who is a community representative on the panel.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Where the panel has been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including development applications that are on the agenda today, in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The Georges River Local Planning Panel acknowledges the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting of the panel is being live streamed and will be made available on Council's website. In accordance with the revised meeting protocols, interested parties wishing to make representations to the panel were requested to register a summary of their interests. 11 registrations were received and forwarded to the panel. The panel has reviewed the registrations and advised the council officers it wishes to hear oral submissions from the following persons who will be called during the course of this meeting in order of the items as they appear published on the council's website. There are 7 parties wishing to make submissions on the proposed childcare centre at 18 Stewart Street, Blakehurst. They are in order: Barbara Van Voort, Liana Karabotsis, Arthur Karabotsis, Andre Fernandez de Macedo, Alina Gudes, my apologies for the pronunciation, Pinto, Russell Curley and Darren Labert. There's one person looking to make a submission on the proposed flat building at 5A The Strand, Penshurst. That's Warwick Gosley. 2 people appearing for the making a submission on the development at the boarding house development at Railway Parade in Cogra, Roger Johnson and Nigel White. And finally, one person making a submission on the proposed development at 50 Dora Street in Hurstville. That's Kathy Watson. The panel has reviewed the completed assessment reports from council staff for the 5 development applications. The panel has undertaken site inspections and nearby locality for the 5 matters that are on the agenda today. We'll deal with each of the applications in order as published on the council's website. They are firstly for the planning proposal 2023/003 at 28 Carlton Crescent, Cogra Bay. It's a heritage matter. Item DA 2022-0015 at 18 Stewart Street, Blakehurst. It's a demolition and works and construction of a childcare centre. DA 2021/0244 at 5A The Strand, Penshurst. The demolition and construction of a 6-storey shop-top housing development with basement car parking, landscaping and site works. The 4th one is the modification 2022/0098 at 248 Railway Parade, Cogra, modification of a review of determination of development application REV 2020/0013, review of the determination of an earlier DA for DA 2019/232 for site remediation, demolition works and construction of a mixed-use building comprising commercial floor space beneath the boarding house. The proposal is integrated development under the Water Management Act. Modifications include internal and external amendments. Finally, on this afternoon, we will deal with DA 2022/399. It's for 50 Dora Street, Hurstville, alterations to an existing dwelling and a new attached studio at that address. As required by the Local Planning Panel Code of Conduct, all panel members are required to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect of any matter that's on the agenda for the panel meeting this afternoon. The relevant forms, as prescribed by the New South Wales Department of Planning, have been completed and are tabled for council to be included in the online minutes of the meeting. No panel member has disclosed any interest or any conflict of interest rather in any matter on today's agenda. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who've registered to speak will be able to make verbal representations to the panel. Each person who has registered to speak is requested to limit their presentation to 3 minutes. I would ask those persons that are invited to speak to the panel via Microsoft Teams that they speak clearly and at a volume that will project into the speakers. This will assist those viewing the live streaming so they can hear clearly what is being said. To manage the live streaming process, all speakers should leave their cameras and microphones turned off until that person has been invited to speak. Finally, as at this time, I remind those persons that all persons that any defamatory, discriminatory, or offensive language used may result in the author being exposed to liability, for which council and the panel take no responsibility. Once we've heard all the oral submissions on a particular application, we will move on to the next application. Members of the public are free to continue to listen to the broadcast. The determination of the applications will be made in closed session, which is not live streamed or recorded. The determination will be available on council's website once confirmed by the panel, and this will occur usually within 2 to 3 days of the meeting being held. That's my introduction. So I will now proceed to call people wishing to address us on the first item, which is the Childcare Centre proposal at 18 Stewart Street, Blakehurst. The first person is Ms. Van Vaart. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. I'd like to thank you and say good afternoon to you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak against this childcare development. As Stephen said, my name's Barbara Van Vaart, and I've lived in Stewart Street 27, which is diagonally opposite number 18, which is the proposal, and so I'm directly opposite the park. I've lived there for probably 47 years or more, and have seen major changes in the area where originally there were a lot, well, from Stewart Street all the way to the bridge, you could turn right into Bullface area, and that's obviously changed over a number of years, and so have the traffic conditions. So Stewart Street and Phillip Street are the main entrances and exits for the Blakehurst area and the Bullface area as well. But I would like to focus on the issues relating to the construction period, because Russell Curley has talked about the general issues as far as traffic is concerned. The construction period is suggested that it will be only 12 months, what development runs according to planning. In this new report that was attached to the agenda, a construction vehicle and pedestrian plan of the management needs to be submitted to the council for approval prior to the issuing of a construction certificate. In the original DA, which was given to us March, I think it was, after not knowing that it was going to be happened, we eventually got an application for it and information about it. The original DA, construction management plan, has already been included previously. I wish to challenge some of the statements in this original plan. Firstly, it says, all neighbouring properties are to have their access maintained at all times. All nearby residents and construction sites will be updated as required with respect to the construction process, particularly in relation to the construction vehicle movements, and to be provided with a phone number to contact the site manager. My response to that is, in reality, the site manager putting neighbours and neighbours' comments and complaints above the supervision of his work, I don't think that is really going to happen. The next point is the site manager will, this is from this DA, the site manager will ensure that there is adequate on-site parking available for employee, tradespersons and construction vehicles where practical. Parking shall be provided in the basement car park area as soon as that is practicable. In addition, staff will be encouraged to carpool and utilise public transport, which will minimise traffic and parking impacts as a consequence of the construction process. Interesting to note, say that they will minimise the parking issues. But in reality, what tradesman will carry his tools and equipment on a bus to work? Have you ever seen this? I have never seen that, and my son is a tradesman. The next point I'd like to raise is out of this previous information that we were given earlier in the year. It says, a plan has been prepared which illustrates a potential 13-metre work zone along the Stewart Street side frontage. You know that on the southern side, it is no parking or no standing, and on the northern side, you're allowed to park. So the work zone parking restrictions are to apply during construction hours only and are provided specifically for the setting down and picking up of materials, not for the parking of private vehicles associated with the site. The work zone will be sufficiently long enough for the majority of material deliveries. However, on days when large deliveries are expected, such as concrete pumping, the work zone will need to be temporarily extended to the west to include the site's future access driveway. So that would mean it would be extending towards the car park. So no tradesman is allowed to park in the work zone. Where will they park during 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the 6 working days that are proposed? Or when would they park in the car park when it's completed, the basement? Willingly risking the safety of their vehicle while directly under an area that is still under construction. Some people would have a lot of confidence in parking their car in a basement when there's still construction above it. The next point is the site manager will ensure that multiple deliveries trucks do not occur at the same time unless they can all be accommodated on the site or within the proposed work zone area. The original size of the proposed work zone area is 13 metres. RMS accredited traffic controllers will be present during truck movements to assist with truck manoeuvring, local traffic diversion and parking safety. A diversion, yet it's always been stated that the development company, that the childcare centre will have minimum impact on the community, yet they're talking about diversion. The next point.
Do you have much more? I was conscious that it's 3 minutes.
No.
Okay, fine.
But I will say that Russell Curley is not able to speak, which I've already spoken, because he has major medical issues. So maybe I could use some of his time.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll try and read quickly, but I am a little nervous. A plan has been prepared which illustrates a potential 13-metre zone. Okay. Zone parking restrictions are to apply during construction hours only and are provided specifically for the setting down and picking up of materials, not for the parking of private vehicles associated with the site. The work zone will be sufficiently long enough for the majority of material deliveries. However, on the day when deliveries are expected, including the concrete pumping, the work zone will need to be extended. So tradesmen are not allowed to park in the work zone. They can park on site, but what space is there on site? Where will they park during all that time? I wonder. Okay, well, they're talking about concrete pours. The DA states that the major pours will be approximately 8 hours each, with 5 trucks per hour. That means that 40 trucks will enter the site each major pour, a total of 80 movements in and out of that narrow street per day when there are major pours. Yet earlier in the original CTMP is the following statement: Stewart Street is not to be used as a waiting area for trucks delivering or as a waiting area for picking up materials. So how will the site manager comply with this? Will the priority be over a major pour? I would think so. Will the construction the concrete trucks and other trucks wait in the adjoining streets, spreading the problem further around the neighbourhood as they're not allowed to wait in Stewart Street? On page 213 of this present report that was attached to the agenda, it states, the management plan submitted has been reviewed and found to be acceptable. If the centre fails to operate in accordance with the management plan, there will be a breach of the development consent. So, who will know that? It certainly will not be the manager's side of interest to inform the council. Although the report states that all the approvals are in accordance with regulations, and yet the traffic report is based on a 2002 guidelines. Are 21 years old guidelines still relevant for today? Right, number 8. In the submission presented on pages 224 to 225, it requests a CVPPM being issued in the prior to its construction certificate. Ask for details about the maximum size of the truck, the proposed standing, the location of the work zone, changes to street parking and everything else. Does this mean that the guarantees that were stated in the original DA will not be fulfilled, but will be changed for the developer's benefit and for the community's detriment without us being informed? Will council compare this new CVPPM with the original data? If there are any changes, how will the community know that these guarantees that have been made are being withdrawn? All of the above questions have not been satisfactorily answered to ease our concerns. I do not want to be rude, but every person, and I mean every person I have spoken to within the Blakehurst Bullfose area when heard of this proposal development has said the same thing. That's ridiculous. Traffic is bad enough without all those extra cars. With all due respect to those who have approved this childcare development, we do wish to question the validity of the development's credibility and the state environmental planning policy requirements. If you have looked at the original DA, there are a number of inconsistencies in that report. I appreciate the fact that some of you were able to come down to Stewart Street and have a look at the traffic this afternoon. It was not a peak period and there were very few cars parked. But if you looked, you would see that the visible evidence of our objection is obvious. And that although the proposals are in requirement and are approved by the regulations, I think that it's obvious that greater proof and value of the development impact will have on the street when you see it. And I do not wish for it to go ahead. Thank you for allowing me to speak a little longer, and please excuse my nervousness. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one question. You made a very good representation and you don't come across as nervous at all. I really commend you for it. Interested to hear the view, when you speak with the neighbours, besides your view and that of your friend, what's the general consensus up and down the street and across the road kind of thing?
You're asking me as I say, without being rude, they all go, and it's exactly the same words. They say, that's ridiculous. That is the first thing that everybody has said. And it's almost as though they have worked out together what they're going to say, but they haven't. They all say, that's ridiculous. The traffic's bad enough as it is without more cars. And when you think that there will be 72 children plus 11 to 14 staff, and staff are not coming in peak hour, that's what the original DA said, that the staff would not come within the peak hours of when the children will enter. So that means 11 staff members will have to come before peak hour drop off for children and leave after the pickups. And yet the pickup that said closes at 6 o'clock. I do not see how they will actually be physically able to do that and keep the child educator ratio.
Just one last question. Up and down the street, is it predominantly elderly children? And we're going to add more children. I'm just keen to get an understanding of the pedestrian situation.
Next door to me is a maybe 18-month little girl. They are renting and they will be moving. So that is the only child I know in that part of Stewart Street, from the highway up to Joseph Street, Joseph Street, and that's, see, my house is 27, starts at 3 and goes up that way, but 18 finishes at the park. So no, that area there are no children, and besides which there is a childcare centre 3.5-minute walk from my place, which is 18, and then there's one in Heath Street, which would probably about 8 minutes, depending on the crossing the lights, from my house as well. Thank you.
Would you mind, if it's possible, for us to take that copy of your?
You can, but there are a few typos maybe in it.
Sure.
I'm sorry, my printer did not like the idea of having to print this out.
That would be very helpful. Yes. The next person to address us this afternoon is Liana Kalabotsis. Ms. Kalabotsis, please come in forward and give us your views.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak this afternoon. I'm a resident of Blakehurst and I've lived in the area for 30 years and I know the area very well. Before I address my concerns, I would like to comment on a statement that was made in the report prepared by the consultant planner for the LPP meeting today. It states that there are 2 notification periods for the DA. However, no letters were sent out to any residents during the first notification period, and only after several complaints were made to council, there was a second notification period with letters sent out to the residents. This raises concerns as to the level of transparency and partiality involved. One of the principles of the community engagement policy is that council looks for opportunities to engage with the community in order to gauge a better understanding of their thoughts and ideas. The first issue I'd like to raise is the traffic and safety concerns associated with this development. The section of road where the development site is located is very narrow and it is a main access and exit point for residents of Blakehurst and Wharface. Car parking is allowed on the north side of the street and traffic is 2-way. However, it is almost impossible for 2-way traffic flow when there are cars parked on the north side of the road. There have been numerous accidents witnessed with cars trying to manoeuvre around parked cars and oncoming traffic. Cars continually speed down this part of the street trying to catch a green light. Actually, this afternoon I witnessed a P-plater. He must have been doing about 90 to 100 k's, tearing down that street, swerving down that street. This will create a significant safety risk for parents trying to cross the street to access the centre. Although there is an allocation for parent parking within this centre, this is not adequate for the centre of this size. There are only 13 spaces for 72 children. As a consequence of this, there will be inevitable queuing of cars trying to access the car park, causing major traffic chaos in a street which is already a chokehold at peak times. You only have to witness what happens outside Mater Dei School every day when cars are queued for 10 to 15 minutes in no stopping zones on the highway, creating traffic congestion on the Princes Highway. What provisions will the centre have in place to police the queuing of cars in peak hours? Also of concern is the safety issues associated with the trucks and other large delivery vehicles entering and exiting the site. When there are cars parked opposite the centre, it will be almost impossible for these vehicles to safely manoeuvre in and out of the centre on such a narrow street. Will residents be assured they will not be inhibited from safe access and exit from their homes? Council has a duty of care to the residents, visitors and road users of Blakehurst to ensure their safety, and as such, this development application is considered unacceptable. The location of the centre is also inconsistent with zone objectives and would result in unacceptable impacts to the neighbourhood. This area is zoned R2 low density residential, not commercial. The development does not meet the day-to-day needs of the residents, and the design and built form does not enhance the local character and has a great impact upon the residential amenity of the locality. The majority of the residents in close proximity to the centre are retirees and as such are home most of the day. This development will have an unreasonable impact due to noise concern. We must question why it is acceptable to allow a first floor outdoor play area in a residential zone. This will create unacceptable noise levels, which will result in ongoing compliance and enforcement matters for the council. This development will have a negative impact on neighbouring properties in terms of loss of privacy due to the scale of the development. There is also no strong or pressing need for the development, as there is already a childcare centre 200 metres from the site and another centre approved for development 300 metres away. Also, my concern about our environmental impacts associated with this proposal. There are several protected trees located in Stewart Park, which borders onto the development site. The excavation of the basement car park encroaches on tree protection zone. There is a legitimate concern that the works being carried out could impact tree canopies or root zones of these trees. Tree roots have two major functions: to obtain water and minerals from the soil and give anchorage support to the tree. No disturbance should occur within this area. What assurances does the community have the protection will be maintained during demolition, excavation and construction of the site? In regards to the basement, this is also non-compliant as it exceeds the building footprint. Also, basement egress does not comply with the Building Code of Australia. In regards to waste management, the report states that the transport of bins waste is not to occur on public roadways or footpaths and must occur within the confines of private property. The report also states that the conditions needed to take place if collections are to occur on the curbside. Which statement applies? How will council be able to make sure all conditions and compliance measures are adhered to when there are so many inconsistencies in this report? I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Carroll.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Arthur Karabotsis, you've now got the call. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I think the traffic concerns have been made loud and clear. I just want to put forward something that when you read through it, you see is pretty logical. There's going to be 72 cars dropping off children. The report says it takes about 6.18 minutes for each drop-off. 6.81 minutes times 72 is about 5.5 hours. How are you going to drop off 72 kids between the drop-off hours when there's only one access in and one access out? It's just illogical. There will be queuing along the south side of the street. And if there's a car queued on the south side and a car parked on the north side, you just can't get through. You're just sowing the seeds of road rage. Simple as that. The other concern is they say, okay, we're going to have the basement parking, the basement drop-off, but the layout, it's an intricate layout of the basement parking area, and there are safety concerns with it. It's too intricate. Mum's dropping off kids in that little space. It's just safety concerns, and who polices it? Seriously, these concerns have not been met. Also, because like the previous applicant put through, is the waste is supposed to happen on site. So if you're going to have trucks coming in picking up waste, you must lose parking opposite. How are trucks going to enter in and out of that space in such a narrow street if there's a car park opposite. So you're going to have to lose car parking spaces. You're going to have to put another no standing, no parking zone on the northern side of the street. It's just ridiculous. The better use of the site will be as a duplex site. The state government is also saying we need more construction of residential housing. That's a much better use of the site. The other thing is there's been many things saying covenants given that they will do this or do that, but who polices the governance? And what are the consequences of breaching any of those covenants? That has not been addressed by the applicant and is a major concern of the residents. If they breach a covenant, what happens? There's also a complaints register, which will be accessed by the police and the council. When the police had a look at seriously a complaints register of a childcare centre, why don't the residents have access to that for more transparency? Once again, why not? I think that does it for me. Like, I want to be brief. Yeah, who polices it, and what are the consequences? And that's a question I would like to ask council. And if you got any comments to that, I would like to hear them.
Thanks, Mr. Karapotzis. So, if the panel was minded to grant development consent to the proposal, it would be obviously subject to a range of consent conditions. If there are breaches of those consent conditions, which extends to the application of management plans and so on, then it would be open to council to take action through the Land and Environment Court to enforce the conditions of consent. That's the enforcement mechanism. You raised some other issues around the complaints register, and that's something that we can take on board. But the main mechanism for dealing with breaches is through that provisions of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act about taking where it's open to council to.
So what happens then when you inevitably get queuing in a no stopping or no standing zone? Who polices that? What are you going to do about at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning?
That's something that the panel has been talking about this afternoon about how to deal with potential queuing and enforcement and making sure that traffic is well managed. We haven't made a decision on the application at the moment, but it's something that we've been giving thought to. Okay.
And so the loss of street parking due to view lines for trucks accessing and entering and exiting the property, has that been considered by council previously?
Well, we've got.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll let you go. Sorry.
Yeah, we've got the benefit of the council officer's report and the reports that were submitted by the applicant, and that's something that we will be considering this afternoon.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was brief.
Cheers. The next person who has registered to talk to us is Andre Fernandez de Macedo. I apologize if I've got the.
We've been unable to contact him on his number provided.
Okay. I'll move on to the next person. If he comes on, becomes available, we'll take his comments. And the fifth person is Aline Guidez Pinto. Is that
person?
Hi. Online person.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please proceed.
Hi, I'd like to start by thanking you for the chance to speak regarding this development. My property is at 18 James Street, Blakehurst, which is located directly behind the proposed site of the childcare center. I have three main concerns about the development. First one is privacy. The childcare center will be a 2-story building with an outdoor area on the 2nd floor. They will have a direct line of sight to my outdoor area, 2 bedrooms at the rear of my property, and to my living room, as the back of my home is basically a glass wall. This will make my family feel uncomfortable and exposed. The second concern is noise. My partner and I work from home and attend several meetings during the day. I'm concerned that the noise generated by the 72 children will be disruptive to my work. In addition to that, child care centers open during holiday seasons as well, which means that the impact of the noise will extend to my time to rest and decompress in my own home. And the third concern is property value. If I have to sell my home in the future, I'll be at a financial disadvantage due to the noise and privacy issues mentioned above. These issues will not only impact my property directly, but also 18A James Street, which is my neighboring property, and the two, 16A and B James Street as well, which are located to the left. So those are my main concerns with this development.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the panel who have questions of Ms. Guida's answer? No, well, there are no questions, so thank you very much for making those representations. Mr. Curley was the next person, but I understand he's unable to address the panel this afternoon. The final person who registered was Darren Labert. Bear with me for a second, I'll take your call and notice, but Mr. Labert, please take the call. Take the stand, thanks.
Hi, Darren Labert. I'm the applicant's town planner from Gowton Associates. I will probably use my time just to try and respond to some of those points from the submissions that have just been made. In no particular order. Point was just made about visual privacy to the rear neighbour, as I understand it. The first floor outdoor play area is set back about 14 metres from the rear boundary. The actual rear setback control is only about 6 metres on this site. We have a clear balustrade for the first floor outdoor play area. If visual privacy is a concern, there's not really an issue from us for that to be converted to be opaque glazing instead. It's not a problem for us. Noise, there's been a couple of aspects about noise. The acoustic report that was prepared for this application has put in some restrictions in terms of noise to ensure that the centre actually achieves the noise attenuation project noise trigger level. The ground level outdoor play area is restricted to 36 children at one time, and the first floor is 18. So those restrictions plus boundary fencing, which is to be 2.1 metres to the adjoining properties to the northeast and the southeast, which is 2.1 metres. Those two aspects together, the restrictions on children and the fencing, allow for the noise levels to be met in accordance with the standards. Those are being conditioned as part of the consent, so that's how we'll achieve the noise aspect. In terms of waste, my understanding of how waste consultant has said that collection is to be on street. There is a temporary waste storage area near the front boundary to allow for the quickest possible collection to occur. Appreciate there may be some disruption in the flow of traffic during the couple of minutes that takes to collect, but that's a very similar sort of disruption that the street probably experiences while council is collecting waste on that side of Stewart Street. Unfortunately, a site like this, we can't actually accommodate vehicle access of a truck onto the property, and it's not actually required by council's DCP, and I will acknowledge that we weren't actually requested to detail exploration of that option. However, no concern was raised from waste about that during the assessment. In terms of the trees of the park, the basement, what actually happened is we had a pre-DA meeting before we lodged this DA. We have chose to put the extended basement a little closer to the park to rather than the adjoining property, just to be able to satisfy the Australian standards within the basement for the car spaces and the aisle. As part of that, we were requested to explore tree root mapping to ensure that those trees could be retained. That's what we did. We submitted a report. No concern was raised during the assessment beyond that, following submitting that report. So as far as we are able to confirm that all those trees will be protected and retained. A few questions from the first person was about who spoke about the construction traffic management plan. From that submission, it sounds like there are a couple of inconsistencies. I will say there is one condition, I think one or two conditions of consent for the preparation of a construction traffic management plan has to be submitted to council prior to CC. That would be when those inconsistencies would be worked out from the current report that was submitted at lodgement. The aspects such as the work zone, I'm a town planner, so I'm not usually involved at the stage of construction actual construction, but my expectation would be that if a work zone is required to be on the traffic flowing side of Stewart Street, there's a possibility that the no parking restriction on the northern side would be temporarily removed to allow for the construction of the development to occur. So traffic would still be able to flow in that area. But I'm not an expert on that, so that's really all I can say to that aspect. One of the other issues was safety in the basement. It does comply with Australian standards as it's designed, and council's traffic engineers didn't raise any concerns with the final layout that was adopted. The queuing aspect from the number of vehicles arriving at the time. We haven't spoken to a specific operator on this particular childcare centre, but on others that I have been involved in, they say that they do get quite a breadth of time between when children arrive, between 7 and 9 usually, and then 3 and 6 in the afternoon. It's not everyone arriving at once, so there isn't a huge chance there would be queuing beyond the ability of the 13 car spaces in the basement that are set aside for parents to go all the way up the driveway and spill out onto Stewart Street. I imagine there's an option for, or this could be put into the plan of management, that parents are to be made aware that if there is potential queuing, if someone is actually in the basement, like the line has already extended up the driveway and it's visible, the parents should continue on and come back in a few minutes when there's likely to be more space. I think there was a point about the complaints register for residents to have access. Never actually come across that, but I don't think we'd have a problem if that's added into as a condition of consent. I think that's about it, but if you have a specific question, by all means, please.
Thank you for that. Straight off the top of my head, I don't have any questions, but do any members of the panel have any questions in response to the matters you've raised? And thank you for providing that response from the applicant's perspective.
Sorry, I had difficulty hearing him. So I missed half of what he said. But I did hear that he said that there were 36 children allowed downstairs in the outdoor play area. Is that correct?
That's right.
Well, I'm sorry, on the presentation it says there are only 32 allowed, not 36. That means that there are 32 allowed and that they're in that area, and I think it was 18 on the top, which means that, what's that? There were 12 children who will not be able to go outside and play with the others at the same time, because that is not allowed. So it's 18 on the top and 32 on the ground. So 18 children will not be allowed to play with the other children, and how will that affect the staff ration?
Okay, look, what I'll do is I'll just invite you, Mr. Labert, to respond quickly to that point.
What I'm saying is that this man is supposed to know, and yet got the has a discrepancy of 4 kids, 4 children.
I won't go into that issue, but I think it's fair to give Mr. Labert an opportunity to respond to the broader issue that you're raising.
Whenever a noise is a concern for a childcare centre, it is quite frequent that the numbers are restricted at one time. So there might be 2 sets of children groups that are to go outside. So they'll, one group will be 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. The next group is 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. for example. Because noise was a concern in this instance, that's what's happened here, and that's how the centre would be run. And I believe there's a condition of consent requiring that to be inserted into the plan of management. It wasn't previously. So the same occurs for the upstairs one, where there's a max 18. There's that would be required to have 3 different groups to manage the noise levels there. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's fine. Take a seat.
Thank you.
Ms. Van White, did you want to say, you put your hand up before just as Mr. Labert was about to arrive. Do you want to say anything quickly further?
Well, that was one of the issues as far as, sorry, we have to record it. So,
yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, this is off the top of my head. That was one of the issues as far as the playground noise is concerned, and how they're going to allocate the children and who's going to look after those other 12 children who are not allowed out to play, and how will they keep the staff child ratio. The other thing is about the noise. We have a wonderful basketball court which the council rechanged Stewart Street, and that was a long time ago. And at the time, I thought that was a very negative thing. It is a wonderful thing. We have a lot of young teenage boys and early 20-year-old boys coming from somewhere, parking their cars and playing in the park. Playing basketball, whatever you call it, netball, basketball. They have a wonderful time. They really do. But you know what? I can hear most of the things they say in my house. And I can always hear the swear words as well.
Yeah.
And that's a different issue, but it is really nice that they play there. But as I say, I can hear the noise from the basketball court.
Yeah.
And that's set back further than the childcare centre.
I'm unable to comment on the park.
No.
I think on the specific issue of management of children who are inside, that's why there are standards for the number of staff. So the children who are inside, I would expect, would be managed by the
correct ratio.
Staff.
Yes. The other thing that
Final
Liana,
one, if I may,
sorry, she did not actually mention is that the driveway into the childcare centre is in and out. It's not separate driveway. I don't know how you look as far as the fire safety issues. It is just, in and out. It's not two separate driveways. So that is another concern as far as safety issues, because the only other access is the stairs, and I am not certain if those stairs are fireproof stairs up into the building.
Thank you for raising that. That's something we'll have a look at as well.
Thank you very much for allowing me the extra time.
Thank you. I will make Mr. Karamalsis, I'll give you 1 minute if I may. We do have some other items on the agenda that we have to get through. Please come up to this microphone and if you can, 1 minute, 90 seconds. Thank you very much.
I'll be less than a minute, less than 30 seconds. One of the other conditions of the DA was on an ongoing basis that there was going to be 11 staff, but only 5 car parking spaces. The other 6 are to use public transport to get to work. In reality, that's not going to happen. It's just going to add to the congestion. Just wanted to make sure. And once again, how's that going to police? What are the consequences of that breach? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that on notice. That's the end of the submissions, public submissions this afternoon to the development application at Stewart Street in Blakehurst. The next submission concerns the development application at the Strand in Penshurst, and Mr. Warwick Gosling put his hand up to address the panel. Thank you all for coming along and joining in and contributing to that discussion. I appreciate it, as do the rest of the panel.
Do you want me to just wait till the crowd disperses?
Sure. I think, hang on, there's blockage at the door. Sorry, okay. We might, yeah, thanks, Liam, if you could just help in that regard. Mr. Gosling, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, panel members, staff and public. My name is Warwick Gosling. I'm a town planner at DFP Planning. I just want to speak in favour of the resolution of the council staff. We've gone through all of the conditions. We see that all of those conditions are completely manageable. Our architect's gone through them. I've probably seen there's a number of amendments made in red to the plans, but we're satisfied with that. We actually have worked very cooperatively with the council planners and urban designers throughout this process, and we're very glad that we've come to this conclusion. That's really all I wanted to say, but was happy to answer any questions if there was any.
Thank you, Mr. Gosling. any members of the panel have some questions? We were looking in detail at some of your plans this afternoon. Any members of the panel have questions? Yeah, Ian Armstrong.
Hi, yeah, we had, just based on the site visit, we had a couple of comments regarding the design. The first one was in relation to the setback from the main street. There's quite a significant setback being proposed. We actually noted in the drawings that there was quite a large setback showing the adjoining property, but it's actually only about 600 mil. So we wanted to talk about the rationale for that setback.
So just can we explain, is that on the ground level or
Yes.
the first floor? Okay. Yeah. So the setback on the ground level, there'd been a bit of discussion about whether or not we should bring the setback at ground level to the boundary or to set it back. And throughout the conciliation process, council was very keen for us, which we also agree, to have some articulation and some also activation of that ground level. It was most likely that that space would be a restaurant, and that would allow, that 3 metre setback would allow some outdoor seating area, which would assist with activating the streetscape. That's the reason why that ground level setback.
And if we were to look to impose a condition to actually adjust that alignment, so it align more directly with the adjoining cafe, would you have any primary concerns with that?
So we'd probably still deal with that by, if we had stackable doors along that frontage, that would then allow that space still to be utilised as a restaurant space. That would still work, but I wasn't sure if, is it for a design reason?
Oh, it's just I think to try and maintain a consistent street wall along along the street, and not create deep recesses that could potentially be septic issues, people hiding in those spaces.
Yeah, I as a from my perspective, I'd have no issue with that, because as long as we can still make it that flexible space, I think that would work.
But the other question we had related to level 1 floor plan. It's apartment number 5, where you have the living room getting its light and air from the light well. Just wanted to understand. Yeah, of course.
Do you mind if I just say we're all seeing?
Yeah. So talking about this one, yes.
So in terms of cross, it's yeah. Sorry. Yep. Yeah. So in relation to Unit 5, it gets solar access in the afternoon through here, and it gets cross ventilation through this window into the light well. There was actually some sunlight that came in through here, but the main compliance with the solar access was from the rear.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think our concern is about the overall amenity with that design, and also I guess in terms of the actual requirements of the ADG, the separation between the windows and that light well. So I think we're going to want to impose a condition to look at the redesign of that apartment to a more traditional and to create better amenity. There's also a switch in terms of the wet areas because of that design change, which I think would make it almost impossible to achieve a 2700 ceiling, because you're going to have all of your pipes coming down and cutting across. So it's just that they were the two. I think you had a point about the planting.
Thanks. Yes, I had a question also in relation to level 1. Perhaps if you could come back up to the front again. It appears from our reading of the plans that area which is used for some landscaping, there's no means of getting access in there to actually maintain plants or readily deal with routine maintenance on. There might be a leak in the surface material. How would you address that issue?
That's a good question. There is currently no means of access to that space.
Doesn't have to be resolved now. It's just, I just wanted to flag, we just wanted to flag that as an issue that.
So, yeah, the issue is if you get access through a premise, it's not good for the amenity, but we
No,
get access.
we appreciate there's a difficult set of trade-offs here, but it was a matter that came to our attention as we were looking at the plans.
That is a good point.
Thank you. And therefore, Jenny, do you have any questions?
Yeah. So, so can I just, is that something? Sorry, is my light still on? Is that something that we can deal with via a condition, or do we would we be looking to give you some design amendments?
I would say potentially it's something sort of we'll have to just think about. You know, we're mindful of the history of the matter,
Yes.
development, but equally we don't want to give consent without proper consideration to some of those things, including the maintenance of that little space there.
No, I completely understand that, and sure there'd be a way of us trying to deal with that if to overcome those issues if we're given the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Costin. The next person is Mr. Roger Johnson. He is coming to talk to us in relation to the proposed boarding house development at 248 Railway Parade in Cogra. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, panel, for the opportunity to speak today regarding this proposal. I just start by saying that the building remains, the envelope of this building remains where the project, I'm the project architect for this project, work for Modern Architects. The envelope for the building remains at 6 stories in height. There's no change to the height. There was some fine tuning that we've included in the modifications to the facade. The main changes involved with the building are internal changes where we've moved some of the spaces around, and one of the main areas there was to move the common area or common room up to the 5th floor, and the common balcony as well. The important thing that I want to point out here is that on those grounds we believe that the development remains substantially the same, and that is the premise on which we've approached this change to the design. Also, I'd like to point out in relation to some of the comments that have been made about the size of the rooms, I'd draw your attention to an email that was received from Mr. Michael Hornery, who was the project town planner on this project, on the 13th of January 2023, when I actually sought his advice, and he says the development consent for the subject development was granted on the 13th of August 2020, before the commencement date of the SEP Housing 2021, being the 26th of November 2021. This policy does not apply. As such, the modification application is to be assessed and determined under the relevant provisions of the repealed instrument, being the SEP Affordable Rental Housing 2009. Now, this is very important, I believe, because if you go to the changes that have been made and the comments that have been made in the assessment, the common room under the approved DA was 52.3 square metres and is proposed to be 55.2 square metres. So there's actually a gain in area over the original design. The common open space remains at 20 square metres, and I grant you that the balconies to the units slightly smaller at 3 square metres. However, we have increased the size of the common room. The important thing here is that the intention was to give more amenity to those common areas by putting them on the 5th floor of the building. Now, we've done a lot of research into this. We've been out there, we've actually looked at the views. There's spectacular views of Botany Bay. Why shouldn't these people have that opportunity? To say that there's the quality of their living premises is being compromised, I think, is unfounded in this instance. The other point that's been made is the solar access is through the windows. Obviously, we're governed by the street grids. We can only do what we can do, relative to the orientation, and we're also dealing with an urban environment here. So what we're proposing to do is an age-old device that's been used for centuries in architecture to provide skylights to that common room, which will give adequate solar access to the area, the common area, as well as the windows. There is some solar access through the windows. So we propose to supplement that with the skylight above that area. So that was another opportunity by moving it up to the 5th floor. The logic is that we're giving them the views, but we're also supplementing where we couldn't provide solar access through the windows. We're using another device, and it's a valid architectural device. They're really the main points that I want to make here. Most of the other things, waste management, that was another thing. The bin store has actually increased in area as well. It was 16 square metres in the original DA, and it is proposed to be 20 square metres now. That's really where I want to end what I need to say, I think. If there are any questions of the panel, I'm willing to answer those things.
No, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Looking at the plans and at the site, we have been wondering about the rationale for the change in the location of the common room and the communal open space. I'll invite other members of the panel if they have any questions of Mr. Johnson, whether on that matter or others, to ask him now. Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah, hi. Just a question. I mean, I think the idea of moving the communal open space and communal room to the top floor to improve the amenity, I think that's a really positive outcome. I understand in the original approved DA, whilst the common room and the outdoor space was on level 1, it was actually on that northeastern corner of the building. Can you explain the rationale for moving it to effectively the back of the building, and by doing so, I suppose creating a bit of a solar access issue?
Well, it was partly about the planning and what we were doing there, but as well as that, and to get cross ventilation into the room as well. We thought that was better opportunity to do that, but also where it was down below, we mainly struggled with the fact that it was. We thought it was going to be opportune to move it to that top area at the back and take advantage in case down the road there was further development. It would still have a view because it can still see down the street and still see Botany Bay. So it does make a difference to actually move it to the back of the footprint.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, thanks, Mr. Johnson. The other person who I should mention in passing, both you, Mr. Johnson, and I think possibly Mr. White, that we've seen the email that was sent to council this afternoon, and we've already had a quick look at it, but we'll have a closer look at it once we go into the closed session. Mr. White, are you on the call at all? If not,
You just need to unmute your microphone.
Mr. Johnson, did you hear that about unmuting your microphone?
Yes, sorry. Yep. Nigel is here. Mr. White is here.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Was there anything, thanks for that, Mr. Johnson. Mr. White, was there anything in addition to what Mr. Johnson has said that you wanted to bring to the panel's attention?
Mr. White, your microphone is still muted.
You may not have heard that, Mr. White. If you're using a different mic at your end, could you unmute it so that we can hear you? Mr. Johnson, are you still there?
I am, sorry. We're just trying to get him now. It's coming up busy on his line.
I see.
We're just trying to call him. You're on mute.
Oh, just 1 second.
Is that you, Mr. White?
You need to unmute.
We do seem to be having a few communication problems.
Yes, yes.
Look, what I might do is I'll listen to, or we'll hear from Kathy Watson about the next development application on our agenda while you try and just get some of your communication problems at your end resolved, and we'll come back to you if that's helpful. So we might just do that.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks,
That'll be
Mr.
good.
Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person to address us is Kathy Watson, who will talk to us about the development application at 50 Dora Street, Hurstville. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just be very brief. Thank you for coming to our site visit today. I hope you could see that I love my house and I love my garden. My architect has put together a submission about deleting some conditions, so I just draw your attention to that, and she said everything in there that needs to be said. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Ms. Watson. I don't have any questions. Jenny or Annette? Here? No?
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming along this afternoon.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Johnson and Mr. White, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Look, as I say,
just, can you hear that?
I'm afraid not.
No.
Look, we've got the benefit of the email that Mr. White sent to the council this afternoon. I'm assuming that addresses the principal matters that he was going to talk to, which were some of the matters you referred to about the changes in the proposal and how you see them being beneficial for the development and the environment more generally, and also the issue around the consideration of the application or modification applications before us against the previous 2009 state environmental planning policy. If there's no other issue that is of substance, I think I might have to draw a line on it, on this call at this point. I'm sorry about that, but we need to be able to move on.
Okay, wait a minute. I've just got Mr. White coming back. He's just trying to get in again.
Okay.
No, he's still muted. Still muted. Can I just make one other point while I'm here, because if that's all right, just quickly.
Just quickly, thank you.
Yeah. I think this the email that I received from Michael Hornery is a very important one, because what council is now saying with regard to this, it seems to go against the advice that Michael Hornery had actually given us, and I think that that's a very important point. And he'd also accepted that the development, as he saw it, was substantially the same development. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. That's
Thank you.
Stated in the email this afternoon. So thank you for that. Sorry, at your end, you haven't been able to get the communications working, but that's, I think we've got a pretty good idea of your views and in turn Mr. White's. So thank you. I will now move to, Jenny Simpson, one of the panel members that does have a question of you.
Hi, Mr. Johnson, is the communication issue Mr. White can't actually dial into the Teams, but you got a landline or a mobile that can call him via your mobile, and then you put it on speakerphone?
That's what we've just tried to do. He's still coming up as muted. He's actually locked. He's admitted, but he's coming up as muted. He can't unmute.
Okay. So the way around it might be if you both got a mobile phone that is not being used in this call.
I can try and dial him in on the mobile. Did you want me to?
Can you hear that?
If you got his direct number and just put him on speakerphone, because that's what I have to do when I use Teams at work.
Yeah, we've got it here now. You there, Nigel? Yeah. Can you hear that?
No, we can't hear anything, but our last attempt to try and get this comms issue resolved is Cass McFarlane, one of the staff here, is going to try and phone Mr. White. We've got his mobile number from the email this afternoon, and yes, might be best just to.
Nigel can hang up. I'll try and dial him in by the phone.
Right. Thank you.
So, just hang on for a second.
Unknown participant is now joining.
It's Nigel here.
Okay, we have you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. White.
My apologies.
No, that's okay. Communications are meant to frustrate us at times. And I'm sure you've been feeling frustrated in the last 5 or 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Could you quickly, if you wouldn't mind, just take us through some of the key points that you want to emphasise to the panel?
I'm glad you've got the benefit of my letter. I believe that summarises the concern we have that council's gone beyond the reach to make this assessment. Section 96 or Section 4.55, as it's known now, is a standalone provision that simply has to assess the task of comparing the original development, what's proposed, and ensuring that the development as proposed is substantially the same. And I've outlined the points as to why I think that is the case in this instance. And we have been guided early on in the path by council's planning manager as well. And now it seems they've taken a different course with this assessment that has come as some sort of a surprise to the applicant. So we're hopeful that, when you do make the simple task of comparing apples with apples, that you'll find that the variations are subtle and are mainly internal and not external as such, apart from some banding that's been done to the elevation, as suggested by council's urban designer. So we haven't done extraordinary with this application, but we're trying to improve the function of the building as we see it. And it also increases the viability of the building. So the owner or the developer is interested in getting started on this, but this is a major hurdle if you adopt council's recommendation.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Mr. White. I'm glad you were able to get to us. And we have, as you say, we've got the letter, and we'll have a look at that when we go in more detail when we go into closed session. Thanks for your contribution this afternoon.
Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll now close